Thank you. Moving on to our next round of panel discussion, where we seek to understand as to how one can become ESG compliant, the actual nitty-gritty of the process. The topic of this discussion is how ESG ready are you? ESG process, data, and reporting.
So ladies and gentlemen, before we jumpstart this particular panel, let me introduce you all to our very, very distinguished panelists who are present with us today. And as I call your names, I request you all to come and take your seat on the stage. So first we have Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, Chairman of Shailesh Haribhakti and Associates. Can we have a huge round of applause? Next on the panel, we have Ms. Apurva Rathod, Head, Group Secretarial and Group CSR and Sustainability, L&T Financial Services. A round of applause. We also have with us today Mr. Pravin Jadhav, Head, Environmental and Social E&S Risk, RBL Bank Limited. Next on the panel, we have Mr. Anirudh Agnihotri, Head of Environmental Sustainability, Health and Safety for Tata Consultancy Services. Our next panelist is Mr. Alok Mishra, Vice President and Group Head of Sustainability for Wellspun Group. And to moderate this panel discussion, may I request Mr. Hitesh Sethi, Director of Analytics Advisory, Finance Solutions Operations for Dun & Bradstreet, India. Mr. Sethi, over to you.
Thank you. Let me just set the brief context and bring it to the panel. From a flow perspective, we'll keep it open. We'll have a session in the end where we'll open it to the audience in case you have any questions. So from a topic perspective, even though we are focused more internal to the firm, looking at processes, implementation challenges, we're looking at the reporting part. But let me just start with the macro picture, and let me open it up by asking Mr. Haribhakti, when it comes to ESG, I think we have a very inward view. We look at our company, what are we doing inward. But when you look at the reference frame, it's about the ecosystem at large. How are we performing within that ecosystem? What is important for that ecosystem? And this is a different dimension altogether. In your experience, how have you seen this being implemented across other firms? And how this is relevant and pertinent in currently where we are.
Thank you very much. What a fantastic lead question to start off our panel discussion. So let me put it this way. Truly, we have reached a stage where ours has become a world of collaboration. So the importance of the ecosystem that you mentioned is far more heightened today than an entity, because it is the collective, collaborative effort of all entities which is going to make the ecosystem flourish. And if we take that view, it is supremely applicable to the subject that we are discussing, ESG. Because think about it. Now, on a macro basis, cost battle has been won by renewables by a big margin, by a factor of 1:8. To produce 1 unit of renewable power costs 1/8 the cost of producing fossil fuel power. So why would anybody in their right minds want to use anything other than renewable power? It's because there's a whole lot of arbitrage that we need to work through. The grid has to be positioned, the last mile has to be taken care of, many things have to be done. It's all work in progress and happening. But for this, it needs the whole ecosystem to appreciate and realize. Take mobility. I mean, there's no doubt that the biggest news items are made by somebody who says that, oh, now we are using green aircraft fuel. oh, now we are going to run hydrogen trucks to carry our goods. Or India has the fastest adaptation in two-wheeler EVs, so on and so forth. So mobility also, the cost battle has been won. If you take circularity, the whole ecosystem, the whole ethos of India, right from ancient times, we have always believed in recycling. We never throw away anything. We try to recycle. Generation after generation uses clothes, uses toys, uses so much of the stuff in our homes. And actually it is mathematically proven in a study that we did many years ago that the cost of recycling is trivial. And in fact, the benefit of it is so significant that it's a shame that we are not adapting it at total scale. And so it's all about the ecosystem.
Right.
I think everything is going to move towards that.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point you make, because when we look at the energy availability, it's more institutional than firm specific. You know, recycling also gets enabled when the entire institution is working, right? There are various stakeholders which are involved. Now, in this context, when we look at the whole principle, right, we start our ESG journey, we say what goals should we set up, within those goals, which are material, how do I assess impact, and let me come to you. I think interestingly in our panel, it's the only manufacturing representative we have. The other are all services. So and the ecosystem point is also very relevant for you. In the textile industry, I think it's the traditional industry where the linkages, the value chain has played a very, very important role. So when it comes to your journey with ESG, looking at setting of goals, looking at the overall materiality and impact, what are the few things which have worked for you, things to look out for when somebody, say, in this audience is starting their journey, or maybe midway through the implementation, some viewpoints on that?
Yeah. I think, Hitesh, thank you for that question. Being in textile, if I just look at identification of material issues, because that is where everything begins. And if you've been in that industry for some time, you would know some of the environmental issues which are the paramount concerns for that industry. So if you look at textile, I think there is no genius required to say that textile has water as one of its most critical problem. Second, the challenge on textile waste, so circularity becomes its second material issue. There is a significant component of energy, and so emissions related to it. And the fourth one, which we identified, because we as a company are largely using cotton as a raw material. So the fourth, which was very evident without actually doing any kind of a brain scratching, we just identified these four clear-cut material issues for us. And once we identified, so we went with a philosophy of the fact, let's not spread ourselves too thin. Let's pick up the key issues and work on those issues for some time, create an impact, and let the world take its judgment, whether that was probably, look back 5 years down the line and then say, okay, we have made some impact. And just to give you an example, when we said that sustainable use of cotton is one of our material issue. So we put a goal or a target that by 2030, we will be using 100% sustainable cotton. No more use of conventional cotton, because there's a very clear defined benefit of using conventional cotton. So it's a clear roadmap. So once you identified the issue, you set a roadmap and a target for yourself, and then the action plan began. We started focusing the entire supply chain around this goal. Whatever was required, we set up a sustainable farming program, working with farmers currently in 3 states. So all of that followed. Sure. But it at least focused a clear point of action, And then there is a data measuring tool which is there to help us understand where we are. But that was how we went ahead, because I feel the complexity lies probably the next level.
Sure.
There is enough and more simple issues which could be just picked up and worked upon.
Sure. No, it's a very interesting point actually. In operation research, we are taught, when we're looking at production management, say that the easiest thing is, to identify the constraint, even though it's not. And why it's the easiest thing? Because that's the machine where the most problems are, I think, as businessmen, when we are running businesses, we intuitively know, what are the aspects we can focus on. And as part of the ESG journey, I think it's important to just pick up those and have the easy wins, because they are the ones which are material and also will have the significant impact. So let me just go to the services side. We've got two bankers, person from TCS. Maybe Apurva, with you, is it similar for you also? The experience been similar?
It is similar, but the only difference is that, yes, we'll have more than 4 materiality topics. And like Alok mentioned, I think what is critical for a manufacturing sector is about energy. I think for a services sector, energy or the carbon footprint is not at that high level. It would be more on social and governance. So what plays an important role is how you balance these three. So if I have to talk about the journey that we had in the financial services sector, we started our journey pretty late compared to a lot of other bankers. We started in 18-19. So there were 2 important points for us. One was doing an impact assessment, and the second was, fixing goals based on the impact assessment that was done. While doing the material impact assessment or identifying material topics, again, we followed a stage approach, and I think that's the best approach that one can follow because it's a new area that you're entering into, where we first did an assessment with internal stakeholders. For the first 2 years, we ran with it. The third year, we said that we are mature enough, to take feedback from the third parties, and we included assessment from vendors, institutional investors, creditors, customers, CSR partners. And now I think we are at that stage, where our material assessment or material topics assessment is really robust. Once we arrived at that, obviously we then had to fix up goals. And again, I believe that it's not possible to achieve goals in all the 3 spheres at one time. How you prioritize is, I always give an example of a risk dashboard. How do you assess a risk? You find out the likely outcome of that event. You multiply it by the kind of financial loss, reputation loss, or regulatory loss that you're going to incur. I think the similar approach we need to follow when we are also prioritizing our goals. And that's what we did. We analyzed each of the risks or the material topics against the financial, regulatory, as well as a reputational loss bit, and set up the goals for us. And while we've taken many goals, I think the 2 important goals that we took, one was the carbon neutrality target of 2035. I think it's a first step towards net zero. I would say that's a medium-term goal that we would take because it will eventually lead us to a net zero scenario. And the second is the water neutrality. In fact, we are water positive this year. So I think these will be the 2 big goals. I know these are still relating to environment, but I believe that the climate change issue is an important part or an important aspect. So these are the 2 important goals in environment piece. On governance, we are also working on, strengthening the audit, etc. I'm not sure how many firms have an internal audit conducted by an external firm on the ESG piece, and I think our firm has done that this year. So that's on the governance piece that we are also strengthening. Sure. On social also, we've strengthened our diversity and inclusion programs.
Sure. And for TCS, is there any delta which has happened in this journey when you started this, how your experience has been, how difficult has been the implementation in terms of the change management, plus obviously the materiality piece?
Yeah, thanks Hitesh. So I think our journey has been quite long, I would say. Typical to the Tata culture and the Tata ethos. We started our journey because environment, health and safety, they're embedded in the code of conduct. And kind of that gives us the backbone or the strength to drive such initiatives or start those initiatives. We started our journey way back in 2008, 9, when we started certification to ISO 14001. That time 14001 was the only standard. And that time when I had just joined TCS. We in fact started the department, when I joined. And I had people ask me, TCS, IT company, what are you doing? Environment kya kar rahe? What are you doing? I mean, is it even relevant to a company like TCS? And that's where I think we took our first steps in terms of, so under the guise of the ISO 14001 certification, we put in all the processes, objectives, targets, improvement programs, and focused very largely on the core environmental issues like energy, water, waste, and so on. Carbon was not so much in vogue at that point of time, but we had started our carbon accounting around 2009, 2010, started reporting to CDP. So our experience has been quite long, and I would say quite tortuous, primarily because convincing internal stakeholders also was very difficult.
Right.
Because the same question that others asked me, that IT company, what are we supposed to do in environment? I mean, do you need it? So I think that conviction took time to build, but this grew organically. I think that is the best part. That once people were convinced, then they themselves would drive things by themselves. And I think that's a very important aspect, because today when I see companies talk about sustainability within 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I think somewhere it is being kind of jump-started. While it will have its benefits, but I think embedding that into the larger organization is equally important. So that has been our experience, embedding into the larger organization, getting everybody's conviction, let it grow organically rather than forcefully. The second thing has been that we have taken our targets way back in 2012. Of course, that time, we were also not very knowledgeable about how to take targets, what to talk about. So we took specific targets. We said we'll reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2020 over a 2008 baseline and so on. And then it has been, a journey, quite eventful journey. We have taken our next tranche of targets, where we're saying that we will reduce our scope 1, scope 2 by 70% by 2025 and a net zero by 2030. So I think that has been the journey. In terms of materiality, that's a very funny thing. If you look at our Sustainalytics assessment or the Sustainalytics scores, they don't treat environment as a material issue for an IT organization. we don't even, they don't even, so for us material, according to Sustainalytics, are only data privacy, I think talent development, and I think one more. Yeah. So these are the only 3 things which are material to IT organizations. So that is the difference. I mean, we have been toiling ourselves, for the last 13, 14 years working on environment. Of course, the HR piece was there, right. Talent development, all those things were there. But when you talk about materiality, this is how diversely, right. People look at you, yes. and try to do a materiality on you. But of course, we have, not taken very, very large steps on the materiality assessment, because I think, like you also said, it is quite intuitive.
Correct.
And people already know what is there. But I think one piece that gets missed out is the external perspective. We talk about regulators, we talk about the known figures. Do we really consider the larger society as one of the stakeholders and who may have an opinion about materiality? For example, we have a large campus in Chennai, and every day we have almost 120 buses which ferry people across the city. So they take them in the morning, bring them to the campus, and evening they take them back. And somebody just remarked that, have you taken the impact of this traffic which it creates on the roads of Chennai? Is it a material issue for you or not? And obviously we hadn't even considered that. Right? So I think our impact, like for example, the traffic of Bangalore is blamed on the entire IT industry. That is where, so I think that external perspective, looking at all your stakeholders who are potential, I think that is where the difficulty lies. That identifying your stakeholders, probably that should be the start. Rather than looking at materiality first, identify the right stakeholders, every big or small, and then try to get into material issues and then trying to prioritize them and so on. So that has been our learning. We may not have solved the problems yet, but I think that is the way to go. That is the way to really look at yourself from an external perspective.
No, it's very interesting actually, what you said, the point you made about organically, I think that, and the other one, that if you look at an external framework telling you what is material for your industry, that may not always be the right thing, and now we've seen these frameworks are talking about dynamic materiality. They're saying that what is material today may not be material tomorrow, and therefore, so it's an evolving scenario. I think it's important. We are running the firms, we are in the institution we are in. And therefore we need to consider the stakeholders at large, first identify them and see what changes we can make, So let me come to, the RBL Bank. Very interestingly, I met him, Pravin, and I said, I have not seen environmental and social risk as a role in a bank earlier. Generally, my experience has been in manufacturing firms, where it is. So can we understand how this journey has been for you, and maybe if you can pick up a dimension also around the product side, what are you doing and how are you imbibing it? It'll be interesting to know.
Thank you. It's a good introduction from all the panelists on various sustainability initiatives. So for RBL Bank, the journey started with one of the large investors being very vocal about the ESG initiatives. And as a bank, we have taken credit lines from multiple DFIs, which insisted that the wholesale loans that we give out should be done environmental social due diligence. So along with the credit assessments, we have compulsory environmental social due diligence for the eligible transactions. So that is how a sustainability policy was set up, which was approved by the board way back in 2013. And 2 dedicated team members are there in the bank from 2015. So our largest impact is not within the banks, but for the financed emissions or even other impacts on the pollution as well as the social side of it is in the portfolio companies. So this function was set up essentially to do the portfolio emissions and assessment of our impact in the financed or loans that we give out. Within the bank, the other initiatives include the executive director and some of the management have certain KPI dedicated towards the sustainable finance. So that is how we went into some dedicated credit lines, which are either towards the financial inclusion or climate smart investments. So we have some specific incentive schemes or competitive schemes which will incentivize these initiatives. Also, the bank has 3 of the largest premises within Mumbai in the IGBC certified green buildings, as well as one Goregaon office is 100% run on renewable energy because MERC allowed this within Mumbai, so it was possible. So that is how we are minimizing our internal impact as well. And how it has been helping by being one of the initial adopters of these initiatives puts you ahead of the regulations. So incidentally, the Gift City branch IFSCA has mandated 5% incremental loans toward the sustainable finance. So this was very easy for us to adopt because we have this practice of having this due diligence through environmental lens, climate lens, and we are aware of what are the requirements. We identify which clients are our potential clients to meet these requirements. Similarly, the last year RBI put up a discussion paper on the climate risk and sustainable finance. So as we have this practice going through, so we are aware that what steps need to be done. Financed emissions, of course, we are hoping that the BRSR solves that query, at least for the larger top 1,000 clients. Again, the challenge there will be facility level data will not be available, but at least at a corporate level, the emissions will be available. And this is how we see that minimize the risk from climate side and other investments, and also look at the opportunities that it faces by providing customizing solutions towards sustainable finance. Thank you.
Sure. So you started early, today you are at a pedestal where that capability is helping you move ahead of the other lenders.
100%. So early adoption has definitely put us comfortable position.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So, sir, I'll come back to you. I think this is another topic which we speak often, says that ESG has no direct correlation to value creation. When you look at an enterprise, this whole investment philosophy which is there, looking at ESG investment, and when we look at investing in companies which are doing well on ESG, in the long run, there is strong value which will get created, and there is an opposite viewpoint on which says that absolutely not, they're good companies, they're doing better on ESG, and value was anyway there, So any view, sir, you have on that?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a very contrarian kind of view on this. Think about it. How did we get ourselves into this mess that we find ourselves? Climate effects, heat waves, tsunamis, forest fires, all of this. We got into this really by accident. In 1870 or so, we discovered that the only way to create abundant energy and feed it as an energy system is through coal or oil. It's just a historical accident that we decided as a human race to pick on these two. If we had picked then on wind and sun, imagine what a different age and era we might have had. We would simply not have had all these people in this room trying to figure out now what do we do to turn the clock back. But that's what we actually have to get engaged in. To think back about what can we do to get back the planet in the way we found it. At the time we found the planet, when first human life actually made its appearance, it had clean water, it had clean air, breathing was easy, you could drink from any source that you could find. And that's where we need to get back. The good news for us is that we've now discovered all the technologies, all the enablements to make this happen. And that is why you find so many things which are counterintuitive. If society has given us a license to operate, now we must ask society for the license to continue to collaborate, to change our technology track, to change our way of working, to change our energy mixes and everything else that we do, so that we can get back to that original pristine planet that we found when we made our first appearance as a human race. So this is not about saving the planet. This is about saving the human race. Because the whole thing has changed completely. We should not be talking about saving planet Earth. Planet Earth will be, some other form of life will take shape. We have to save ourselves. And therefore we need to come together and collaborate and turn the clock back.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. So I'll just quickly open it up. I think value creation is one theme. The other are more aspects pertaining to stakeholders involved. I think, when you look at it, Sustainalytics or firms who are doing, assessments as third parties become one. The global frameworks, standards, could be GRI, SASB, that's the other aspect. Locally also, the Indian regulator is moving both on the lending side as well as on the capital market side. So value creation, the role of other stakeholders, and then this whole aspect about data, and reporting, when you look at it and how your experience has been, challenges you've faced, things you are working through or have worked through. I'll just open it up. Anyone who has any view on any of these?
So thank you, Hitesh. So actually, whenever you start any new thing, you'll always face challenge. And first is you'll have people saying that we don't understand this. And that's what exactly happened, I think, with all of us, if I might take the liberty to say, that understanding what ESG is, what reporting means, is something which has been difficult for us to, make internal teams understand. Again, when I talk about, when you spoke about reporting frameworks, there are a lot of reporting frameworks, and I think Mr. Haribhakti has covered in his podcast that there needs to be harmonization in those frameworks. So I think the first step that needs to be there, and the challenge that I believe that we face is about having varied types of framework, be it SEBI or look at GRI or SASB. And then harmonization is something that will definitely help us. Because we have to understand that what we are making the disclosures, or the reason why we are doing the ESG, is also so that the stakeholders are aware. And if we make our reporting or using our framework, which are so complicated, it's not going to actually yield the results for which we are making the disclosures. So I think the first point would be buying in of the entire organization, helping them understand why we are doing this initiative, and secondly, looking at an harmonized framework is something that I would look at.
Sure.
I think, Hitesh, the moment you mention about value creation, I just feel from a manufacturing industry, sustainability function brings a lot of value. I feel there's a huge amount of benefit which comes, and that's the first reason why sustainability came into existence. Because it's not just creating a green cover page for organizations to go out and use it for brand building. I think that's a very trivial way, or trivializing the whole thing. There is a lot of value which the function brings in, because its focus is on something which I would say one important stakeholder in this entire function when an organization works is the environment and society. So what was probably getting left out when you just had one model of economic growth driven model, and the impact on environment and society was not at all there to even look at. So that bringing it on the table to get considered in a business process framework itself is a big value. Because today we have come to a stage that the company's existence has come or become on stage. So I think value perspective, 101%, no doubt that there is the kind of value which a function brings to an organization. And that's the reason why I would say most of the top tier organizations, and even today I would say it is percolating down, there is a huge demand for sustainability professionals. Not just for, let's say, the reporting and stuff like that, but there is a real value which the function brings. And of course, as Anush was saying, that the reporting frameworks, they've complicated things because so many of them approaching the same thing from a different perspective, and you got to cover everything because you need to stand out and be part of all of these frameworks. But I think as an organization, you also couldn't take a call which one makes sense for you. Not necessary, I would say, is to rush into all of these different frameworks. Pick and choose which makes best sense for you, and take your own stand. I think there is a space available for you to stick to your own stance and say, well, this is what my material concerns are, this is where I have made an impact, and put it out across through one of the frameworks, sure. Adopt one of the framework so that you communicate what you have done. Sure. That's equally important. Yeah.
Sure. I just want to add one point about data. That is the crux of the whole ESG reporting, whatever you are talking about today and this ESG forums. Data is the most critical part. Often, our experience has been, we generally put out a list of data points that we want. We send it to the respective functions. Ye data chahiye, send it by end of the week, end of the day, end of the month, whatever. And that's it. The way the operating functions perceive the requirement of data is very different. It doesn't have a perspective of why you need the data for. What are you trying to achieve through the data representation? And I think that is where the data comes incomplete, the data comes maybe a little warped, and that ultimately impacts your entire reporting quality. It is very important, I think, for even the operating functions, the stakeholders to know what are you trying to achieve through that data. If you are talking about, say, circularity, or you're talking about zero waste to landfill, you're talking about water neutrality or carbon footprint reduction, what data you require, and why you require it for, how will that data ultimately appear in the final form. I think that makes a whole lot of difference in the way stakeholders perceive the need for data. It is often seen that data is very precious to functions. So sharing the data just like that, just because somebody sent a mail and a long checklist of the data points we provided, people are not very open to sharing data because they see that as a functional ownership. So, and earlier things were easier because you had regulation. You could say, okay, this law requires me to report your water consumption, report your fuel consumption, and so on. So data was flowing. Now with this increased demand for data, there are so many data points which were not reported earlier coming into the reporting framework. And that's where I think education of the stakeholders, the operating functions, to emphasize why and how the data is needed, I think will bring a lot of improvement in the data quality. Second is, I'll just take a minute, Hitesh. Second thing is, we often wait for the third-party assurance for the actual assurance to happen. And then that's where we discover a lot of data gaps, and then we spend a huge amount of time in closing those data gaps. What I think we found useful was having a very formalized internal assurance process, which has helped us significantly. It works both ways. One is that you get to see the data, you find the data gaps much earlier, before your annual closures and your annual assurance. But that also becomes a forum for you to pass on the message about data requirement, data quality, data, why the data is required. So that interaction during the assurance process helps a lot. And which we have found it, of course, we have not solved all the data issues, but I mean, it's a journey. But I think that has helped us improve a lot on the data quality. Even you would assume, even technical people who are supposed to be adept at all this data, they often also don't see the perspective. And what is sustainability after all? It is a perspective. It is not, you're not trying to replace an operating function, you're not trying to replace production, you're not trying to replace any function, you're just giving a perspective. That this is the perspective from an environmental or a social perspective, and that is what you need to bring in. So giving that perspective to operating functions will, of course, enable this entire ecosystem in terms of understanding, and hence the quality of data, which is the most crucial for any reporting to happen, respectively. Okay, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, thank you. So very quickly, I'll just try to summarize, open it up. So what we said, it's important we covered a diverse set of topics. The ecosystem is important, and for us to work in that ecosystem, the tools, techniques, the infrastructure today is easily available. And in that context, we said that the cost is not a challenge, right? Our first mindset is, sustainability will increase our burden. It will not, Second is that leave aside everything. Intuitively, what are material factors, what will cause that impact. Please go ahead and start working on them. Don't worry about frameworks and assessments. The third thing we said is that if it has to be sustainable, it has to be organic, right? That's the point you were making, and I think that's where the context of the data, how it comes in, becomes important. The coherence of reporting, I think so many reporting standards, coherence, which I think the regulators are working towards, and making it relevant in terms of my product. I think the last point you were making was on, we are so used to looking at return, capital, net worth, metrics, so balance sheet, cash flow, that we forget to assess the impact we are causing to the environment, assess the impact we are causing to even our employees, right? When we say diversity, inclusion, that is because we feel that's a better sustainable business model, and I think these all facets are very important. We make it complex, but these are simple steps we can undertake. Yeah, now with this, I'll open it up if in case anyone has any specific questions or say, I don't agree, any viewpoint, please feel free.
Good afternoon. Shailesh bhai is always indeed informative. That I have a question to you. You see, the simple accounting system, which is from after independence, today, a balance sheet or the profit and loss account, any document signed by chartered accountant is something which has got weight. Do you think that ESG as a framework, can this be a weight or this be, moment if you want to practice, it has to be either audited or the rating or something to be validated. Self-disclosure is always good. Indians are good in reporting. Everybody's reports are good. Recent cases, reports were excellent. I will not name, even US and over here. How about the audit, rating, some sort of a vigilance which will create the ecosystem will grow. The system will get mature. Today, the accounting system is matured because of instead of chartered accountant. I must say that. I'm not CA, but likewise, will this happen for ESG?
Thank you very much. What a wonderful question. I have my friends, I mean, we are being hosted by Dun & Bradstreet, which is a rating agency. We have my friend Amit here, who is also representing a rating agency. Think about it like this. The whole era of concentrating only on financial capital is over. The future of all reporting is integrated reporting. If we do not have in our minds the idea of 6 capitals, human, environmental, all of that which you said, reputational, innovation, all of those will need, the deltas which drive each one of this will need to be identified and reported. So what's the kind of system you will need? You will need a system which does not depend on data entry. The biggest problem of accounting today has arisen because we have hung our hat on entering data. Data sets should be captured as they arise. So we'll need TCS to create a whole new way of accounting which will capture all these data sets, which will enable us to report on 6 capitals and then blockchain it so nobody can tamper with it. Okay? Now your question becomes very pertinent. If this context is created, do we need an assurance that there is no greenwashing, there is no overstatement, there is no wrong impression that is being created? The answer to that is a resounding yes. Because as a human being, you just want that assurance and you want to automatically trust. And that trust comes only if somebody else has applied their mind and seen it through their eyes and said, yes, this is good to go. Now, so therefore, I depend heavily in my role as an audit committee chairperson or as a board member on auditors, internal systems which are there. And in the ESG field, we will have to start depending on rating agencies who will have common, robust practices. We'll depend on other professionals who will give us the assurance that there is no greenwashing. So this new environment is being created. The good news for us is that it is being created very rapidly. And that's what gives me tremendous faith that we will have a far better outcome from ESG than the 75 years that we have spent in trying to agree on a standard, common set of accounting standards.
Continuation to this, while in the organization generally for environment and social, there are responsible functions which are working on this. Can this G be considered as a new and enhanced role of the assurance function? And is that the trend which is being seen? And if the G is the full responsibility for assurance function, what role will they play into the E and S?
You know, our law already prescribes severe penalties if your MD&A gives wrong information. Apurva will tell you that. I mean, the basic assurance that we need, I need as a board member, that the MD&A is accurate, is of a very high order. I always request 3 eyes should see things before it comes to me. Because if I'm not assured that people have vetted it, I'll simply not be able to sign off on it. So G is already subject to audit. The only spot that is not subject to audit today is the S part. There is such a plethora of environmental laws in India that if you're deviant on any one of them, you'll get caught very fast. That is all being tracked, audited, looked at, all of that. Big data exists on it. It's on the S, which is voluntary, that we need to give all our time and attention.
I just have time for one more question. Sorry.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, this is Anil from GR Engineering, heavy engineering manufacturing sector. ESG basically translates into people, planet, and profit. We are mostly focused on the money part of it, the profit part of it here, with respect to marketeering and investeering. What about a statistic or a data? We've been talking about so much data from the, starting from the back end. It's like starting from the finish race to audit, to create data so that we can audit it. What about data with respect to, say, the Big 10 in every sector, having trained their people on social aspects, on the carbon footprint their family strikes out? Because if there are 10,000 employees in one company, and there are many, their carbon footprints are controlled. They know how much they are contributing negatively to the environment. It makes a huge difference, and it only requires a little bit of training. There's not much money involved also. And we get back the right type of data to know how we are going to, you can forecast then where we will be in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So I think we should be focusing more on the people and the planet. I just want to share a small statistic here, which is very important. There are 11.5 million species living on this earth. We are one of them. All 11.5 million except us produce waste which is consumed down the line. We are the only guys who produce waste that is waste. And to let everybody know, the weight of the waste we have produced is higher than the weight of the earth. So the situation is very serious, and I don't think it's about just data or ESG auditing. I think we should be training people so that we save the planet and we produce profit. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree to that. It's our social and moral responsibility, and as enterprises, we play a larger role in the value creation, and we can start the change. Like you rightly said, when we say the extended stakeholders, our employees are one of them, and I think a large part of what the services company drive are driven through what their employees, when we look at the transportation, what is happening, how the transit is happening, I think all of that, absolutely fair point. And the idea is that, Milton Friedman said that the only objective of the firm is to make money, but now we're saying, no, we disagree. We need to look at the society at large, we need to look at environmental at large, and that's an obligation which we should include in our decision-making process and implement it. If not today, you should have done it yesterday, actually. Yeah, so thank you so much. I think it was a great experience. Yeah, so.
Thanks.
Can we have a huge round of applause for all our panelists here? And before you go, I would request Mr. Sethi to hand over your tree certificates with your tree on it to all of you. And while this is happening, can we have the applause going? And while this is happening, I'm sure some of you must be thinking, how can I get a tree in my name? Are we? Yes, some of us. I see some very happy faces now. So all you have to do is, once you step out of this door to my left, right outside that, there's a Dun & Bradstreet ESG Summit photo booth over there. And the rules are very simple. You get your photo clicked over there. You can use your smartphones for that. And you'll find 2 hashtags over there. One is the ESG Summit 2023, and the second hashtag is ESG Warrior. Now, once you post that photograph on LinkedIn, mind you, on LinkedIn, I know we all want to post on Insta first, but yes, this works on LinkedIn, so you have to post the photograph on LinkedIn, and there'll be a tree planted in your name, and you'll receive a certificate from Dun & Bradstreet for that. So yes, are we all ready to do that? Great. Can we have the applause going for our panelists here? All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for such an insightful discussion.